welcome the newcomers to the event today. We've just had our first speaker, and now we're ready for our second speaker, who is Wayne Newell. I'm not even certain of all his titles, but I know that Wayne has been director, principal of the Passamaquoddy bilingual program for probably 20 years. I think 20 isn't easy, probably even 25 years maybe. Wayne has demonstrated a kind of unwavering commitment to maintaining the language in his community. And he comes with a lot of experience about things that have been both successful and not successful, and which is really the reason that we wanted him here. But I also wanted him here personally because a moment ago I mentioned that Daryl brought Kathy to our house. I actually knew Wayne a long time before I knew Daryl, so okay. At any rate, I just wanted to say that Wayne has really been also the power and the spirit behind the revival of the Passamaquoddy language in Maine. And at any talk that I've ever been to, he's just been the motivator. He's just full of good spirits and motivation for people. And I just knew we had to have him here. Besides, part of New Brunswick, people may not know this, part of New Brunswick is on what would really be Passamaquoddy land. And the whole St. Andrews area used to be the site of a Passamaquoddy village. And I don't think there are many people who know that in this area. So Wayne, thank you very much for coming, and I'll give you the floor.
I don't know if you know it or not. We're doing a film that we've been working on. So the gentleman that you see with the camera is part of that film. It's not about me, but I guess I'm in it sometimes. By the way, I'm a Irishman in the closet today. I'd like to first, I learned through the metamorphosis in my life to reorient my priorities. And one of the things, as I grow a little older and probably come a little closer to being equal, that's the other end of it, have learned a real rich appreciation for the things that really count. And one of the things that really count is the ability to thank my Creator, our Creator, for the things around. And I have a real simple Passamaquoddy thought that I usually try to say when I get up in the morning. And I'll do that now so that to invite not just you people to participate, but to invite our ancestors and even our elders, some of whom aren't here today, so that we're all gathered into something much more powerful than what I could say or do, or what you could say or do. So if we'll just take a moment now and interpret this in your own way, in your own heart, however way you choose. And I'm sure it'll be just as wonderful. Gelwazid, Kamaj Nullah's welcome up Helawel Mihin, Kegiub Moswagan, which all came in Nullwakan, Elimilian, Bemkiskak. Which all came in now, Skad Nuzami Bali the Hum Siwan, Naga Quijo came in, Skad Na, Nuda the Hum Siwan, Gujiji Psigag Tabexen Hochkila. Dan Geddy Edom, dan Geddy Leg Bemkiskak, leij kila libawadman magaknail. Wuli wunna yu kisimagwenet mauswin wag yu debol titit. Wuli wunna na kisi magwenet nagaktan ke wan psi des kichinuag yu webnakig. Wuli wunna na dan yu kisalminikani awadijig. Psi den anuannug, psi den andagwejimulannug, wijaukunen bem kiskak naga. Nesto magunen dan de Eli gizi leig weji skadwuni de hazultimak nautimen, kamaj nulas wel te muti ben bemki skak eli moniak. It's really interesting because I was a little bit late, and I had a whole bunch of excuses for why I was going to be late, and then I remembered certain things. First of all, I should have known better, because the whole conference is operating on the time it's supposed to be operating on, and it's not late and it's not early, and that's wonderful. The other thing is I got an opportunity to listen to the first speaker. While I don't understand the entire Mi'kmaq language, I understand enough to figure out certain things, and there are certain things that are universal. And I was able to feel really affirmed, because a lot of what I thought that I should say was being echoed by the first speaker, and I feel good, because in all of our journeys, in all of our collective journeys throughout this thing, or this maze I call life, it's really important to feel a part of something. It's really important to know, for me anyway, that other people value the things that I value. And I really felt really good just sitting there listening and being reminded. I'm 52 also, so I'm not your elder and you're not my elder, so I guess there's 3 times to being equal. But I really was moved by the things you had to say. Now what do? What I'd like to do is to kind of talk on the same issues, except maybe from the context of my own personal experience. After all, that is all that I have to offer. Talk from the context of the fact that I too, once, way back, millennium ago, was a student at a university, was a high school student, was a grade school student. And so I really feel connected to most of you who are students now, because I was there. And one of the things I was going to say this morning, and then I thought about it, I stood out in my backyard about 5 o'clock this morning and wondered things that I should try to say. And one of the things I was going to say, because I'm also a student now, and I said, well, I was going to tell you all that being a student has given me a lot of time to reflect. Then I thought, wait a minute, they'll never buy that. I mean, who has time to reflect when we have to meet all of this criteria and all of these, what I call lineal measurements of our personhood? And so forget that remark. You know, we don't have time to reflect. We're all too busy trying to get A, B's, C's, and D's. Okay. I'm going to say some things today, hopefully, that, first of all, provoke controversy, and hopefully nourishes and nurtures the idea of hope. One of the thoughts that I did have was, in order for us effectively to deal with today, our current situation, my own experience has been that there must be room and there must be time to adequately process, to adequately look at what's going on with us today in relation to our own histories within our life, and in relation to the histories of those that the generation that has just passed on. Because I think there's some things going on here that basically are what I call no-fault issues. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I'm going to try to be incredibly honest at the point of possibly alienating a few of you, but it's the only thing I know to bring the point across. It's the only thing I know to make the whole language issue real. I think that a good majority of you in this room are probably understanders of the languages involved, but probably a good majority of you are not fluent. I think that a good majority of you probably, either consciously or unconsciously, resent or harbor some feelings of resentments as to why my generation didn't teach you the language. If you are not in that category, first of all, let me say you're damn lucky. But there are many people. In the last 20 to 25 years, I've tried to address the issue of how best to keep alive the very things that you spoke of in terms of the language itself, because the language engenders the spirit of who we are. To say the very, very least, on a very personal level, I think I have made some tremendous mistakes in my perceptions of the way things ought to and should have been done. I spent a lot of years, months, days, whatever, reflecting that because it's a real personal issue. Because my children do not speak the language. And that's about as honest and personal as you can get. My children are now at the age when they're really adults and they're really talking to me about the things that really matter. And my two boys, besides, are bigger than I am. And so we have another way of communicating. But we really do. It's an issue that I think plagues all of us. It's an issue that faces every Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot village in the Wabanaki land. It's an issue that is very, very serious. You've got a generation of speakers, mostly people, myself and older, who are still fluent in the language, who could still present and speak the language, who could teach it. You've got a younger generation of speakers or understanders or people who wish they could speak the language. That's the reality. The causes for how and why all of this happened, I think, can't be overlooked. They can't be ignored. In my estimation, they have to be really processed. Because first and foremost, whatever we are and whatever orientation we are human beings. We have a way of dealing or not dealing with losses. Long before the languages began to fade, and in my estimation, that's the current issue or critical issue right now in all of Wabanaki land. It is stronger in some places and it is much weaker in other places. Nevertheless, the pattern happens quickly. If I had known 20 to 25 years ago, and I think I knew it, I just wasn't alert to it, how fast language transition happens, I think that I might have taken some different steps. Nevertheless, that's where I was as a human being at that time. But I think that one of the things that doesn't happen is we don't humanize the loss that we're facing in a real, acknowledgeable, and affirming way. If some of you in this room, if your teenagers, if people just younger than you are, resent the hell out of the fact that they no longer speak the language and it's our fault, it's probably okay and it's probably very normal. If the elders in our community, and I'm starting to get there in terms of age, hopefully someday I'll get there in terms of wisdom. If, however, the elders are saying these young people are not interested anymore. Some of you have heard this. These kids just don't listen anymore. They don't do this, this, and this. Again, that is a real thing. Neither one of these, in my estimation, have any blame that should be affixed to them. It's just the reality of the situation right now. We can look back and see that at the time of contact, there was an agenda brought by those who encountered our people. And it's a very simple agenda. It's been put into all kinds of fancy doc film. It's called The Black Robe. I really had a difficult time watching that because of my own issues in terms of some of the things that happened. There was one scene, though, that seemed to say something to me. And it was this scene where the missionary, the Jesuit missionary, somehow or other had gotten into the woods to either take a shortcut or do something. Anyway, there's this real panic scene in the movie, for those of you that haven't seen it. And he just starts panicking. He's out in the woods, and he just flips right out, and really well done by the camera. And you could really feel the anxiety of this guy. And right in the middle of this flipping out, native people come walking by. Just sort of looked at him, you know. And they couldn't understand the concept of being lost in the woods. This guy did. I mean, he panicked. He was lost. And then I thought, there is no word in our languages, I believe, for wild. There's none that I can find. And we use that term wild or wilderness a lot in the English language. What is it? I can't conceptualize it, except when I think. And it was really good that you brought that out, the thinking process. If I start thinking in the other way, whatever that way is called, I start feeling those anxieties. Part of what happened in that agenda I spoke about at the time of contact, it was to completely change the thinking pattern of the Aboriginal, Native people, Indian people, whatever term. Those labels keep changing so much that I never know which one to use. So if I use Passamaquoddy people, you'll know that it means everybody else. Was to change the thinking process. And it's really interesting because I go to a Jesuit school now in Boston. And most of my professors are Jesuits. And this comes a time in my life when I'm really evaluating who I am, what I'd like to be when I grow up. And in order for me to do it, and the point that I'm really trying to make, in order for me to do it effectively, I must first acknowledge that I'm mad as hell at all of those nice people who came to do nice things to us from their viewpoint. Because I'm now at the stage in my life, and I can say this unapologetically, they really didn't come to do nice things to us. They came to rob us of who we were. They came to debase our culture and to change us into something that we're not. It's taken a lot of years for me to come back around in the circle. And if I'm smiling, it's because I feel pretty good about that. I've had to rely personally on the spirit of those that came before me and those that are alive now, and I've had to acknowledge my responsibility, my personal responsibility, to pass on the things that I know to those that will come after me. When we started the bilingual education program about, I can't remember what, 20, 25 years ago? A long time ago anyway, before I got this pot belly. Let's put it that way. I came in fresh out of Harvard University, a real lineal Indian native who was going to fix up this thing that was going wrong. One of the things that I thought I'd do is, okay, the languages are disappearing and we don't have much time, so therefore we'll convert into a writing system. And we'll put everything in textbooks, and everything will be hunky-dory and everything will be fine. I wasn't insincere in my thinking. I really meant well. So did the Jesuits. We did this, and we have a lot of stuff printed in the native language. One of the most wonderful experiences, though, about all of this is sitting down with the elders. Most of them are gone now, and I worked particularly with some of the oldest members. One of them died at the age of 100, and he was smart. I got to tell you about this guy. His name was Newell Gabriel. He was smart, much smarter than I originally anticipated, because Newell would never let us tape record anything. He gave us the excuse that he was afraid the machine was going to explode, but today I see that there was a wisdom behind his manipulation of us, the younger people. He believed so much, and it was so much a part of him that the only way he knew how to give us anything was through the oral tradition. I realize that today. I didn't at the time. We made adjustments. And one of the things that I remember him saying to me, and I don't think he spoke English at all, but I remember him saying to me, and I hope I accurately translated, if you want to hear what I've got to say, then you're going to have to listen. It was that simple. Being caught up in all of the technology and all of the new methodology of the white man's way, I think I lost that wisdom for a while. So we set out, we set up a curriculum, and we wrote books, and we did a magnificent job. We did a wonderful job. We trained our own people into the writing system, and I believe it's used in other places in Wabanaki land. And that's wonderful. Today, I can honestly tell you that way down deep inside of me, there was always something right there in your gut that says, this isn't quite right. This isn't quite what it should be. And it especially was true when I would sit down with an elder and they would tell me a story. And I'm going to do one in a few minutes, okay? And for the Maliseet speakers and even for the Mi'kmaq speakers, you're going to understand portions of it. I would sit down with them and they would just be themselves. Sit in the kitchen, have a cup of coffee or a cup of whatever was available, turn on the tape recorder and do all kinds of exciting electronic magic. They would tell the story, we would take the story, and we would translate it into the writing system and publish it. What we couldn't take with us is the spirit that they brought to the story, the pictures they created. Because the oral tradition is really wonderful because it makes and gives you, and we were talking about this last night at my house, the ability to make your own pictures. Gives you the ability to fix for yourself whatever it is. They are helpers. The stories are helpers. Storytellers are helpers. But they give you the honor and the dignity of making the story your own story. That's the wonderful thing about oral tradition. So one of the stories, I'm going to do it right now. I kind of want to get into this a little bit. One of the stories is, I'll translate it in a minute. Let me just do the story. Or I'll attempt to translate it. It's never any good, the translation, but I'll try. Ki wadata yagsegiliam mia. Wat de gamak tlab in. Het liebeskum haditi gwanikal. Negam nagadi wiji ebeskum dan am tligisi kusagassin. Wiji na negam gizi wiji ebeskum on. Ma kewe tlab in. Kom dus lak is ak hizo gidwai now. I must be, because now when. Me so go. You see what? I'm going to tell squee. Could walk into the mall. Did he get quetchy mall? Ellie get there with Haki so good, I must be. Tell me that. They get because I got hole in your will. Tell me that need beji and where she will be a best come on. You'll longer do which you best come. Club en coach, dat go kewels, so ga holding. De lo moest be kom mij opzetten men. Ella ha. Niet daar wat jij holen. Ik ga bij hem holen, tel niet daar, het go kewi net dag is pom holen, tel de hem no. Pol goed to we dem. En ja zo. Most gerne an ut maken, und de makjes so dal ja toch, das ist lekker. Ik neem een tomaten, en ga pizza en zien, speschoolheid man, het jou den uit man. Wat lo? I must be kiss maar check. Ik is whisky west so. Til young leader has it and look at what go carry. So ga Holland. Die al demmen no. Omdat je wel liep aan uit te maken. En ja, mensen uit te maken, ze willen heel aan uit te maken, op pizza en pizza maken. Heel maar ze die uit te maken. Tel niet dat, kook je niet dat. Tel dem no, omdat je ze niet. En ja, ik wil zeggen binnen, ja, ik ze niet. Ik moest kijken toen ik eerlijk, kast niet nog zo. Dan al jouw kon niet het lo ik kan es. Eerlijk. En ja, kies op in. En mem, hoe is het niet? En dan ga mem, hoe is het? En ja, wak aan het al heel ook het, ja, wak out te me quest zien. Maar dat is uit je meeuw. Eerlijk, het ja, kwepit. Al ik heb me al weekines. Niet dem zo. It's always fun to tell that and many other stories. Basically, the story is very simple. It's just this, and I never could figure out it's an insect or something. Saw some other insects. I assumed they were Passamaquoddy insects. Crossed the water playing ball, no less. And I don't care what they say that baseball is the national sport of the United States. I think that we played baseball long before anybody was here, or we played ball. Anyway, he wants to get over there, but he can't figure it out because he can't swim. And so this, is it a spider? Yeah. See, I know these stories so well that sometimes I forget the translation of different characters. Anyway, spider is coming down the river in a canoe. And so he sees the spider and figures out that he can get across if the spider will only give him a ride in the canoe. And so he hails him over and says, "Come over here, I want to make a bargain with you. If you will take me over there, I'll tell you stories, old stories, on the way." That seemed like a pretty good deal. So the spider says, "Okay." And so they proceed on their journey. And so after a while, they get off the shore quite a distance. And he says, "I thought you were going to tell me stories." He said, "Well, wait a minute, I'm going to have a smoke first." And so the story describes that he takes his pipe out, this little old raunchy-looking pipe, and puts the tobacco in and goes through all of that and has a wonderful smoke. And meanwhile, the spider is going like heck, and if you're familiar with Passamaquoddy Bay, we have some of those Bay of Fundy currents, and so you really have to work hard when you're canoeing. And says, "I thought you were going to tell me stories." By now he's getting really irritated. He said, "Well, wait a minute, I put my pipe away." So he puts his pipe away. And by now, the insect or the spider thinks that he's going to hear some stories. And he says, "Well, what about my stories?" "Well, wait a minute, I have to sneeze first or blow my nose first." So he takes this old rotten handkerchief out. Looks like it had a lot of time on it. And proceeds to really, really sneeze. And in the process of sneezing, he sneezed so hard that his head comes off. So he couldn't tell any stories. And that's the story. I wanted to do that because it points out the richness of a way of transmitting basic elements of who we are and what we are. My grandmother was my chief storyteller. I can recall that a long time we would gather around her bed and she would tell us stories, and I can recall falling asleep many, many, many nights just hearing these stories and having these wonderful pictures created. And the reason I tell you this part of my experience is because in creating or trying to recreate or trying to do something about the language program in our community, those things were not at the highest priority level at that point. We forgot those things, those very basic things, those real, alive things. Those things are the things that made it possible for me to be fluent in my native tongue. Not doing those things is what made it possible for some of you in this room, as much as you want to be. That's what made it possible for you not to be fluent, because we stopped doing some of those things. Part of what I wanted to say today was to have us take a look at what we can do. Because in spite of the fact that I have great concerns and I have much sadness, and the younger generation have certain resentments, I still believe that there's a lot of hope. I still believe that it's entirely possible and probable that we can restore our languages to where they ought to be, at the top of our agenda. If we don't do that, and again, I'm echoing the first speaker's remarks, all of this other stuff is going to be kind of secondary, in the sense that we can learn beadwork, basketry, we can learn dances, and to a certain extent we can learn music, but we can't ever, without our languages, fully appreciate that special quality that makes us who we are. We can never truly heal from the pains of especially the last 400 years. And whether or not you agree with me, it's my opinion that we carry the legacy of all those losses as they happened ever so gradually. One of the most controversial things and one of the most careful things I try to do is try not to impose my own things on some other people. It is my firm belief, though, that even in the transferring or even in the process of changing, basically, well-meaning people try to steal certain things. One of the most important was our spirit and our way of expressing that spirit. When conversion came along, we were basically told that the road to salvation was something different other than what we had believed in for thousands and thousands of years. We were basically told that land and the way we view land must change, i.e. the concept of private versus communal ownership. We were basically told that the economy of the region, which was really based on need, survival, enjoyment of the better things in life, had to change so that you got native people eventually to trade in fur skins much more than they would normally have taken so that they could get something else, which was introduced to them. Those are the legacies that each and every native person in this room carries with them today. And unless and until we acknowledge some of those things, we cannot truly go on with the vision that I think we all have in this room. Each one of us has their own private conception of what it should be and what we would like it to be. Those private, very private conceptions are to be honored by every one of us. One of the healing mechanisms is to figure out what do we do with the blame that's so prevalent in all of our communities. What do we do with that? Because while we're busy doing that, the young blaming the old and the old blaming the young, God help the ones in the middle, my generation, what's happening? What is the reality that's taking place as we get more education? What's happening in our schools? Our schools are strange lands to our culture. That's one of the things that I learned in the last 20 years. And my thinking has completely reversed to where I started out. I thought that if you got curriculum in the schools, if you got the writing system in the schools and we published our own material, everything would be okay. On a more personal level, I thought as a human being, if I went out and got an education, I would be okay. Those are real critical things for us to look at if we're going to really find what we want and the place at which we want it in our collective education. Because we do have a common agenda. We do have a common agenda, and that is if we don't do something in the next few generations, we won't even have any concerns. This is a critical time in the life of the Wabanaki people. We have to begin rethinking what institutions such as this, and the one across the street, or wherever it is, I know it's around here somewhere, and the institution that I go to, we have to begin to rethink what it is that we want to shape for ourselves so that we will come back to where we're supposed to be, in the circle. We will come back and once again affirm people like my grandmother, people like that 100-year-old guy that I worked with who didn't even know how to speak English. There's this real popular conception, I think you touched on it a little while ago, that somehow if we speak English, we're going to be more educated? Baloney. We're going to be less as a person. Now, English is good in the sense that we can use it as a little tool for ourselves to communicate with each other till we learn each other's languages. But English is not the wherewithal. It is not what makes us people. It is not what demonstrates and amplifies the rich culture we come from. It's just a tool. In the same way, much of what I see today, much of our challenge, is because our generation, and your generation in particular, have been exposed to the terrors of unchallenged content in the media, particularly television. In your own estimation, those of you that are parents, or those of you that are recent people that have just moved away from home, just answer this question in your own minds. How many times do we stop and think, or how many times do we examine what our children watch on television? I can tell you for a fact, and I just brought up 3 kids, there wasn't too many times they turned the thing on and watch, and I did the same thing. What do they watch? It's not native programs. They're not in Passamaquoddy or in Micmac or in Maliseet. They also watch values that aren't necessarily Wabanaki values. They watch violence. Probably the most prevalent thing they watch is violence. They amplify what our schools basically teach. And these days I call it the lineal model. They don't teach the sacredness of the way that we communicate, the whole business of consensus. They teach power-oriented type things. Now, you're probably thinking, well, he thinks television is bad and all of us shouldn't have televisions. No, that's not reality. But I do think that given the technology in our communities, given the technology of these institutions of higher learning, just think about that phrase for a minute. These institutions of higher learning, we could actually use things like television to maybe use as a crutch for a while to get the word out to our communities. Because everyday behavior says that the word isn't out there because there are less and less native speakers as the years come and go. And so it seems to me that the whole priority question is the number one agenda item, and I hope these next few days we will begin to look at it in that sense. It seems to me that a total mindset or a different mindset has to be at least examined. We have to at least look at it, and I'm not telling you something that you should do. I'm sharing with you personal revelation as a result of my most recent academic experience. Gisi Tanamok asked me a little while ago, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but if you do, just say stop. He said, have you got your degree yet? And just, if he'd asked me that 3 years ago, I would have been so proud that pretty soon I'm going to be a doctor, a doctor of something. not a medical doctor, I would have been really proud. I mean, just 3 years ago. And I said, well, no, I don't really, it doesn't matter to me now if I get it or not. And I saw an affirming look on his face, like I had really come around to where I was supposed to be, and that felt good, when he did that. I've had an opportunity for the last 3 years to really look hard as to the things that really matter. Because, as you get a little bit older, you get to that stage when you're going to be equal again, or you come closer to it, and it's the other end. You start thinking, what things really matter? When I was some of your ages, I had the whole world in front of me. Had a lot of dreams. And I'm not ashamed of the journey that I've been on. It's my journey. But it's brought me to a real special place today. And so while I coined the phrase mistakes, I really don't know if that's a proper term. I just can't find another one. I think change is probably more appropriate. I believe today, more than at any other time in my life, that until and unless we begin to tell our schools, our institutions, and those people that are with us or want to be with us, that we really have to change a whole thinking pattern. Unless we stick with that agenda, I think we're going to lose. If we try to win the battle by going the route that some of us took, and that is make our schools more Indian or native in content only and not in value, we're going to lose. It's that simple. I'm not advocating that you all leave university right now. What I'm doing is challenging you to really become bold in your individual perception of what you think it ought to be, and you unequivocally and unapologetically follow your route. There are more ways to human confirmation and human dignity than Western philosophy or Western thought. Believe me. One of the greatest challenges I face as I do my dissertation is to try to behave myself. Because the people that I deal with, the guys that are going to make me whatever they're going to make me, have certain rules. This university has certain rules. All the institutions of higher learning have certain rules. It would not worry me particularly if these certain rules didn't infringe on the very boundaries of who you are as a person. It wouldn't bother me. Rules are rules, and there's usually fairly good reasons. But in this case, it's an all-encompassing thing, and the only bottom line, if you obey all those rules and not assert something which is a part of all of us, the bottom line is we're going to lose. If, however, you insist on certain basic fundamental human rights as a native person, and I don't mean political rights, I don't mean economic rights, I don't mean those accessibility rights, I mean if you say, for example, if we have a problem, how are we going to resolve it? You really do have some choices. You can have the standard choice, which is offered by all of these places, and even in our own communities. Look at the governments we have. Okay? The choice is whoever gets the most votes is the winner. Or the other choice, and it hasn't been gone, and it isn't gone, especially amongst our elders, is the choice of consensus. How are we going to work this out so that everybody is a winner and nobody is a loser? That's the challenge that I give to myself and I give to you. We have to make those decisions. The fact that you don't know the language, the fact that I do, and those people my age, is nobody's fault. We're wasting too much time with blame. Where we are today is where we are. You spoke a little while ago about responsibility, and I totally agree with that. As a matter of fact, I said, what do I say now? Because she's saying something but I feel better because, we're connected. The fact of the matter is, there are certain responsibilities, and I'll just give you an experience. Is it time for me to shut up, by the way? No, okay. I can go on all day, too. Eva Soccerbasin, who's a student here, said, I warned them about you and told them to give you only 2 hours. Anyway, the choice to me, or the responsibility to me, is twofold. Number one, we've got to figure out a dynamic way, a really dynamic way to make sure that the language is being conveyed to the next generation. Number two, there's lots of native speakers around who know the language, but they're too hung up on being so perfect that somebody's going to laugh at them so they don't use it anymore. I hear that all the time. Well, I really know it, but somebody will laugh at me. The responsibility part comes in that whatever it is, whatever the process is, the bottom line is our grandchildren. And they come quicker than you think. I got 6 already, and I'm a young man. The bottom line is those kids in all of this debate will hear only English. And it's going to happen that fast for every single one of us. And if somebody in this room is sitting smug and safe and think that it's not going to happen in your community, you're mistaken. You are mistaken. Because it sneaks up on you faster than you can, what is that? Blink an eye or whatever the terminology is. It does sneak up on you. And all of a sudden, you say to a kid, "Gewtliwiz," which is a very, very basic question. What is your name? And the poor kid looks up at you with all this love, hope, and joy of a 5-year-old, and they say, "Ya." It happens quicker than we think. And so it is not just the fault of we who are older. It is not just the fault of the young people for not showing enough interest to really sit down and learn. I say to you, let's look at that. Let's make that a primary question during our get-together here today, tomorrow. Even though I'm going to be leaving today, I got my licks in now, so I am still going to be the recipient of whatever it is that you talk about. Let's try to examine the question of what ways, what radical ways could we do to get each other's attention. Never mind the attention of the institutions right now. Never mind academic credibility right now. What are we going to do to get each other's attention so that we'll sit down in our kitchens and tell each other the stories? So that we'll tell our young children the stories. What strategies can we find so that we can make that happen, using whatever means are available, but yet making damn sure that we don't fall into the trap of making them just other lineal or Western models, I think that a lot of us, while I'm sharing with you my personal mistakes, I also see that a lot of duplication of the kind of stuff that we have tried to do over the years. Today in our school, we have begun to rethink that process. A lot of the people that work with me are here today, and I'll share with you a story. Because schools operate on schedules and time slots, much like the universities. The minute that you disrupt that becomes a real traumatic experience. It's less traumatic, I think, for Native people, but nevertheless, it's traumatic. And yesterday we had a full staff meeting at our school, and our school's been closed for a week because the sewer backed up. So we all kind of got together after they fixed the building up and got all the methane gas out of there. We got together for a staff meeting and we announced that the cultural team is going to Fredericton. Well, we didn't have any way of communicating with everybody because like so many other schools, the majority of our teachers are non-native. And so, you saw the body language immediately indicate, schedule changes, flip out time. So to avoid and to keep some continuity and some consensus, we made the proposition, all right, we'll come halfway. Let's make today Friday and tomorrow Thursday. So that's how it's possible for these folks to be here. Okay? Got to keep peace in the family. And so my parting shots, I'll be around, by the way, till about 3 o'clock. My parting shots are that we need to really seriously prioritize the implications of what we're all doing today. We really, really need to take a look at that. One of the things that I've done, and I would ask you to do the same thing, is why are you at this university? Who told you to come? What do you expect to get out of it? Those are the kinds of things that we need to really look at. It's a real personal thing. Why did we come? Is it from promises from other people that somehow we're going to be better and easier? Is it something greater than that? My own personal experience has been that it turned out that each time I went away to a university and came back to my community, and I've never left my community except to go to school, each time I was given the wonderful gift, and I really cherish and honor this, of being able to see my surroundings and the people that I grew up with in a real affirming way. I'm really fortunate because I still am a product of an extended family. My mother still lives with us, and I hope she will until her time comes. I hope I never have to make a decision of home and rest home, because to me it's like a morgue. I hope I don't get there. I don't know. Right now it's wonderful having her there, my first teacher, my most intimate teacher. She gave me the ability to think and speak my native language. If you're here as a student for that reason, then you're on a real productive priority journey. If you're here, like I was, to do something more so that you can be a corporate person and stuff like that, then you have to realize the reality of the situation. And that is, you will never be able to enjoy the full benefits of who you are as a person. And again, I would not in any way attempt to judge myself or any one of us. We are where we are who we are. The only contribution I can make today is to get each other's attention so that we can dialogue this most serious thing. It's not an alarmist thing. It's not something that might happen. It's something that is happening, and it's real. If we don't begin insisting that our schools at the community level, where the little ones are, begin changing in a radical way the method in which we teach our children in those schools, you can do two things. One, forget about it. Number two, don't send them. Okay? If we don't alter them, sending them only ensures one thing. And in different ways, each one of us have experienced that. That is the further decline and the further effort to really live and live out who we are as native human beings. The agenda has not changed from the time that the French explorers came around the St. John Valley. Ulostagu hasn't changed. Still there. It's very institutionalized and it's very subtle. There are things that each one of us do each day that contribute innocently to what we would perceive as being evil or against our culture. The minute that we ride in a car, the minute that we turn on a television set, all of those efforts, as menial as you might think they are, contribute to the larger effort, and that is the further diminishment of the chance for us to live the beauty of our culture. That's how serious it is. The elders have been telling us this for years and years and years and years. Stick with the oral tradition.
Yeah, all right. No, God, no. Yep. Right there. He's good.
Karawa.
I just introduced them. I wasn't.
Hey.
Yeah, you gotta get a translator. Why not?
Maynard, karo. Translator. Huh? Taken meow. Which one?
Simon.
Una na mo? Una magi awaj. Taken meow.
Yeah, make him Simon.
Which English we're using or which Mi'kmaq we're using? Okay. You wanted to hear a story, eh?
Too bad, eh? I only got lies for you. No. Agn mult toxteba. Mawi am skosa way, uchita hoy nina tel miluisi giskuk. Tevji bugal kol wisun gekkundeman. Am skosa way ga usit khamuya nega telwidim kiba Garlin Johnson. Namajasi. Isi way na nuwe bides wiyaka. Tluwen sportchik si balkhiya. Bides uwe yona ha. Wel teskar jinum. Kisna wel teskwi nin memna kisu mig widedemu. Mig widedem gata hoy waji pasteri pijit ko yaddi chum dam wi bon khag. Namali ewi ga. Glasieu. Na do judu na wisun bilwe ya hignum wimk. Brown away. Niskama udideda. Model dasi wasla wisun uswad wan desik tagai wije kudo. Desik tagai mi jana mobugal no tagai gelu kana esquiana negamoy. Na hapel mi ya abajasi. Ulana dei pijiako e paston kawagi na liala goy. Na habaji pisina negla na metkiga. Nis kama ulided mo nugo nus hui wanek. Model wajig mig mawi skill. Model yawe won ladet. Magis hadem won ladet. Wala punal diegam nana gatem kaglas yewana. Sabasi gabnek tan del punal dieg ma wausud wogum tan megi dan na mawi keb mi dedasi chitkino mig mawultig. Na del na waji si yoga yabne gaijek. Toch bugwaldim kawai me gagla si yodo khadem me. Mo gado, mo gilen nus nugo. Mo si ewi snagil. Liana machte we ya, gagla si ewi snagatto. Na helmi ya si jiwa kesadem na nugo weji dai bingo ah. Porchili la bingo de bolgi majwinuk. Jiwa weji la bingo fan. Skama ulide tenim nin mega de mudu maliewi won. Mudu maliewi won. Maliewin modelim kedo ladu dan meski na roi delim nin. Tan mig widel multen uchi biji mig widel multen. De wet kokoi. Maliewi des no da dem kinu. Koyo uchi de uchi maliewi des no. Kedua bajian nuwi ada delim nim gaji dosub net. Wala gaji usub na men duil nus nin. Agla si ewi sa men uli wakta si won nuwe gadik dem nin nakiki manamo men walik. Nagisama dir. Isit khobugwalok sieg negama Paul de Louisiana. He's na Johnson na Brown na Paul. Moni na jibil tuwod mula dan wenia baktan del mi Louisiana wizun. Mogoji duran roi da anki dedem. Koitanis kam anki dedel mamen miliaidis ni mi majwinu de mamen do dosultis ni go chit pastan yeri usit khamuya baktan del mi majila usit khamuk. Kesi askaya gasniga. Jelo waji munaninen. Kabal nulna. Kabal nula wajna wa beg wahi. Negam na deluet. Dei munal sa speli del mani dan deluet negam. Kilo na haskai bio. Ana majasi gadu. Portachte gisap. Elie yaishk. Paston kawagi galie. Paston kawagi begisnare na medel madnim knadi. Kemudumim kunaish. Pijo gadim kisam pojum dan deluida adish. Kede maksadu im kigam tuiga digan kuljamu nenasi udan deluisi. Nsuli away mekdan desu koyek. Najinem besko yalado elnum wijla haishk. Tuga begunat kiktuk. Nagizi usumukta kalabis. Na beji usim listugushk. Rahmana sulia waimu. Negi gamudne. Nimna usit hamu kemudne was. Kad negi gamudne. Muna was wiladami was. Tell with me was wiladami. Haiji gas, og det bautu go mu da. Ah, wesh kui dawe ina nespiu. Mugino mui wan suli oiga desemim ka. Pegi sin ka dugo labish listu wish sa de ya antu de mis na wigit na de la pogol na wan na de. Pejik sugai na nagu. Na siya khadam na de no da yo wa weltes ka han kisigum. Ni da besko ga mili de Louisibna. Emily Paddlesor. Welteska. Na ho chinum la gaginwal wil de wed me ga de welam stil wed la ginum. Aksat sto het gistualux. No dan op tuali nem gis kujimu gayim. Mo ga de wed la de wed welam sto. Ach to je gis kesalusk. Ani na mo go se wistu wa. Men du is er dem ni lima sajes na danwen. Mo dan og ni ne chugu mo na nin muj. Mi le wistu di denin. Nagadua kisi wol deska diega na ni ge gisa neutiska chela agumo chindes iska imon fakto ha mayek. Ani na hagla si e wat sta gisluwe. Pas ma afsa muina buo wagla si e witu. Tiba kwena mobia mulzidim. I'm going to translate what I just said. When I was young, this involves my different names in my lifetime. I was born and baptized into the Christian faith as Catherine Isabel Johnson. My mother was a Johnson. And when I grew up to be a teenager, I got hot, like most teenagers. Took off. It's normal, it's life. Nothing to laugh at. It's a lot of fun. You grow up. There's no shame in it. We've all been through it. I went to the States. I didn't say in Mi'kmaq that I had lived with someone for 4 years in between that time. And we just couldn't live together. Anyway, I ended up in Massachusetts, and my own uncle, my own cousin, told me I should get married. I should get married. And I would have everything I ever wanted. I would never be poor or anything. So I married this white man. Little did I know what was waiting for me. And my name went from Johnson to Brown. Ugh. So that was all right. I didn't live with Brown very long, not even 2 years. Just enough to have enough children, one right after the other. And after I left, well, he left me, actually. I left and we stayed there for a while, my children and I. We came back to Canada. When I got back here, my own people were telling me, "You're not Indian. You don't belong here. You're a white woman." Well, I never saw a white woman so dark before in my life, but didn't make me feel any better. I was a white woman now. Then this business about throwing the Mi'kmaq women off the reserves that were married to non-native people. They're not Indians anymore. Get them off the reserves. We don't want them here. We don't want you here. Jesus, I'm thinking, how the hell did I get myself into this mess? How can I lose what I am? How did I lose that? What happened, I'm no longer Indian. I thought about it, and I said, gee, when I married a white man, I became white. Just think if I married a goddamn monkey, I said to myself, I still have hopes, you know. Still have hopes. And about that time, I got introduced to bingo. You know, bingo? B-I-N-G-O, bingo? Well, now I'm a bingo maniac, but that's another part to it. I used to take people to bingo. And one night, I had one bingo fan left in the car. Looked behind me. Was a man. Nigmau man. Single, never been married, no family. I looked at him. I said, Golly, you want to get married? He says to me, what? What? I says, you want to get married? Gee, Catherine, he says, if you want to do something, you know we don't have to get married for it. I said, no way. I don't mean that, you know. I says, I have a problem. I says, I'm no longer Indian. Now, if you marry me, I'll be Indian again. How would you like that? You want to make history? I said, I'll give you 2 months to think about it. Well, the guy must have thought about it so much. He almost got run over in the meantime, and they were teasing me. They said, oh, he's just dying to get out of this commitment he thinks he made, you know, to marry me. So I got another name. We did get married in front of the Justice of the Peace and a great big bumblebee that kept floating around us. So I got the name Paul. Now, I'm not only related to Johnsons, I'm related to Browns. Now I'm also related to Pauls. Gee. We didn't have children or anything. We didn't live together. But we did travel all over Nova Scotia, and written on the back of my car in a great big board, just married to Eskasoni band number 428.
What's your number?
I didn't lie about it. Everybody knew was the only way to beat the damn system, the system that took my Indianness away from me. So that's the only way I knew how to do it. So that was all right. I got a divorce. I got a legal divorce from Mr. Paul. Unfortunately, I never did get to know what he was like as a husband. But that's all right. Now I have a name, Sorby. After the marriage with Mr. Paul, I went on a honeymoon on my own, went to the States. Well, see, in our travels, while we were supposedly honeymooning with this sign on the back of the car and a bunch of cans and all that, I kept forgetting I had a husband. I'd leave him sitting at the doorstep, and I'd get to next town, somebody would call me, you left your husband at the doorstep, he has no ride, you know. Anyway, I'd go back and pick him up and say, well, could you me enige? You want to go home yet? No, he says, let's see what the next reserve will do. And but, you know, we were getting gifts and all this stuff. I was getting them from one reserve, and I was giving them to the poor in the next reserve, you know, and then they'd have a celebration. So, I mean, all of Nova Scotia celebrated this marriage. Anyway, I got tired of the honeymoon, you know. I took off for the States, and while in the States, I got robbed at gunpoint. I got robbed in gunpoint. Kidnapped, as they call it. But fortunately, I got away, because I told the guy who kidnapped me, government or anybody wouldn't pay a fucking penny for an Indian. So why keep me? So that's how I got away. Not at that time. Anyway, I ended up in Restigouche, and I had never stolen in my life, and I had never sipped gas, never drank alcohol, never smoked dope or anything, but that time I siphoned gas all the way, and I went to a restaurant and bummed food, and I made it to Restigouche, and there I met my husband, and I've been with him for 18 years now, and that's why my name is Sorby. And that's going to be, I guess, for the rest of my life. That's one story. That's the story of my different names. Okay? Anything else? Let me tell you a story about what it was like when I was younger not to be able to speak English. I don't know what grade I was in, I forget now. But I used to stay home from school, as it was normal for most families when it was time to harvest or time to get hay brought in for the winter for the cows. And so I didn't go to school for a few days. Teacher wanted a note. Nobody knew how to write. Couldn't send a note. I got in school. They asked me, "What were you doing?" And I didn't know. I knew they were asking, where were you and what were you doing? It only made sense, to my Mi'kmaq mind. And she kept shaking me. What were you doing? Tell us, what were you doing? And I was so afraid, I didn't know how to say it in English. I went like this. I didn't even know the name for sigh. I didn't know that till about 5 years ago. Squizoran, eh? So like language it's so precious to me. It's really so precious. Then another time, I was asked to speak somewhere, and I had never ever spoken in front of anyone like I'm doing today. I said, oh my God. This was at the Shubi school. We were in a concert, a St. Patrick's Day concert, as a matter of fact, and I was supposed to be Father O'Reilly. Father O'Reilly. And I was supposed to say, "Me children, such a lovely day." I was supposed to speak this in an Irish play. Well, do you think I can come across like that? In my Mi'kmaq, the original tongue? I was standing there. "My children, what we day?" And the nun would come and say, "Shake me some more," as if it'll make me say it any better, They had put this derby, or what do they call them, little hats, and I had a shillelagh. Is that what they call it? Updoon. Yeah, and something in my lapel. Anyway, I must have looked like Charlie Chaplin, They couldn't get me to speak like an Irishman. "But you have that gibberish," she said. "You have that gibberish. You could say it that way if you want to. Try it again." "My children," by then, from the shaking and everything, my voice is getting, "My children, lovely day." Some more. Shake me some more, And I was supposed to sing. What was I supposed to sing? Oh, "Far across the sea to..." Galway Bay is called. I put my mind has gone blank to Galway Bay. Because when I got up there I was supposed to sing Galway Bay, talk to the people. And there were so many people out front there. When they opened them curtains up, it was like opening the Iron Curtain or something. I couldn't move, let alone talk. So they closed the curtains again, And Father O'Reilly was supposed to have such a nice hairdo. Yeah. By this time, they had tucked my hair, whatever little hair I had, under the hat. After every shaking, my hair was poking out even more. Then she'd fix that hair again and blank that down. Don't let that fall out again. Do you hear me? Don't let that hair fall out again. No, sister, I won't. Well, sing now. Standing there. Close the curtains. Didn't I tell you to sing? Don't lick that hair like that. It was funny, but it wasn't funny, you know. And I thought about it. I remember knocking over a shamrock plant that was on the table. Of course, the curtain time again. You broke that. You cleaned it up. And I was always thinking in Mi'kmaq. I didn't cry. It wasn't because that I couldn't cry, because I used to get giddy. You know. Do away with it down, you know, a crazy person doing this to me, you know. I used to think that in Mi'kmaq. And that's what used to pull me through. My language would pull me through. I'm not believing I'm honest to it. I let me, you know. This is a crazy person who's doing this to me, and that's what used to come to my mind all the time. There was many incidents at the Indian residential school when I went in it. But I look back, I think I've come to terms with most everything about the Indian residential schools. There were humorous times for me because of my language, my Mi'kmaq humor. Because I really believe if I didn't have that, I don't know that I would be standing here today relating these stories. Then another time I can remember, they had the nuns, of course, as children, not just Mi'kmaq children, any children of any race. They always poke fun at their teachers or poke fun at whoever, you know. I'm sure some of you have names for your professors and stuff like that. Well, we had a name for one of these nuns. We used to call her Square Hole. She walked like this. Had a fingernail about this long. Well, we were practicing the Silver Jubilee of the Indian residential school, and we had to learn, my grandfather's clock was too large for the shelf, so it stood 90 years on the floor. Well, I got fed up with that grandfather's clock, so I was lip-syncing. I introduced lip-syncing. I didn't know she was behind me. Square Hole was behind me. I lip-synced anyway, because everybody else is singing. I didn't know she was behind me. While I'm going, making faces and singing, you know, the next thing you know, I see stars. Oh my God. She looks at me. Don't you mess with me. I can hear a pin drop, and I can hear the grass grow. Jeez, I looked, you know, and she can hear the grass grow with all that clothing over her ears and everything. Jeez. Astounding hearing, you know, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, get up to the front of the crowd. You want your mouth open, she said? We'll open your mouth. So they took a little, I don't know if it was a toothpick or something, and they opened my mouth. I stood there, I don't know how long. I don't know if the flies got in there, what got in there. I just stood there, you know. And I'm thinking, Christ, I must look ridiculous standing here, you know. And I'm trying to talk to the kids that are passing by. Some are crying and some are laughing. Some are giggling at me, you know. And I'm trying to tell them, I'll kill you. I'm standing there, I'll kill you. And I said, oh, God, I was thinking to myself, oh, I really must look ridiculous. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to get you too, you know. But these are some incidences that they were funny to me. My mouth hurt a little bit, but it didn't kill me, you know. And another incident is when I was splashing around. We were doing, it was around after 4 in the morning, or we were cleaning stuff, because we had to get up, I had to at certain times during the school time. I had to get up at 4 and dress up like Aunt Jemima, you know, the kerchief and all, and go down and make some food, get it ready for the rest of the students. Like many of our girls went through that. I didn't mind that at all. I liked it. Until one day I was fooling around. I was always fooling around, and I was splashing water with another girl, Tanas, Dora Mae Tanas. We were splashing water at each other. I didn't know she'd gone out of sight, and the nun had snuck up. And I'm still there. And I turn around, there's owl eyes. There's owl eyes. Water dripping down her glasses and down her nose, and standing there like this. What am I? Oh my God, all I could think to myself, boy, you're going to get it now. You know? So anyway, she took me up to Father Mackey. Monsignor Mackey. P.J. Mackey, I think his name was. And she says to me, oh yeah, I'm going to bring you to Father Mackey. So I went up. And Father Mackey says, what did you do? Nothing. Listen, young lady, you don't get sent up here for nothing. What did you do? I splashed owl eyes. I beg your pardon? I splashed sister. Now, why'd you go do stuff like that? Fooling around? Fooling around while you're working, eh? I'm thinking to myself, who cares what I was doing? Just get me out of here. Anyway, he says, I'm going to have to do something about this, and it'll have to be an example to the rest of you. To the rest of you Indians. Anyway, I had worked in the what they call the chapel floor. I used to work in the chapel because I was considered holy, but I was a sneaky holy. They saw me, I was sneaky. Yeah, boy, I could just about talk to the angels when they were around, but anyway, they made an example of me. I had worked around there, and I knew what was wrong with Father Mackey by then. He had ulcers, very bad case of ulcers, and he was taking this white medicine, all kinds of it in his bedroom, Anyway, they took me down to the refectory, and I had remembered that I had asked, what's that medicine for? I had asked a nun. She told me what it was for. When they took me down to the refectory, it held about 600 children. They're going to make an example of me. Puts on the boxing gloves, puts them on me first. By then, I wasn't that young, I was getting on up there. I was around 13. And I mean, I worked hard. I was a tough little bugger. He put on the boxing gloves. He's going to make an example out of me. All for splashing owl eyes, right? And I'm thinking in Mi'kmaq now. I'm saying to myself, "Guess no guys now tell Swigan like diablo will." You know, thinking in Mi'kmaq, he has a sore stomach somewheres. Guess no god na. Nigen intum gisit hamli goka. Agistala lignin. I'm thinking in Mi'kmaq, thinking, that old bugger's got sore stomach somewheres. And if I can just hit him first, I'll floor the son of a bitch. He can't get me, right? I'm thinking this in Mi'kmaq. And I'm standing there. I'm saying, he's not going to do to me what he did to Terrence Paul, because I've seen him do that to other children. And I'm thinking, you're not going to do that to me. I'm thinking in Mi'kmaq. And only my cheese model mouse to the moon, don't tell you nin. But a book $8 was kiss Nazad in the down. Anyway, they put them on. Come on, take a swing. Take a swing. They haven't even put his on yet. Come on, take a swing. See how tough you are. See if you can throw a punch as fast as you splash the water. He goes. No, I'm stubborn. I said, no. Come on, he says. Come on. I look. I'm still thinking in Mi'kmaq. He's still not standing proper. I can't hit him until he stands proper. He's pushing me. I say, nothing will happen to him if I hit him now, because he's not. I don't have the edge against him in balance. I'm thinking that in Mi'kmaq. Anyway, not funny. Hit me, he tells me. Let's see if your tongue. You're the one that's famous for speaking that gibberish, eh? He says. I hear reports about you all the time, goading me, huh? I hear reports about you speaking that gibberish all the time. You're still as bold and as obstinate and as savage and as wild as the day you came, he said. We're going to fix it today. He's going. And I'm still thinking this wild, savage, whatever tongue, right? Waiting for that moment where I'll have the balance, all of a sudden I got the break and I let him have it. Right from the floor up. Right in here. A good idea, Gulba. Splashed him right out. It's not funny, is it? But what's funny is it's my language that pulled me through. If I wasn't thinking my language, I wouldn't be here today, because I'm sure he would have splattered me all over the floor and sent me off to some Halifax Institute to say that I had been crippled in a fall, or that I had been run over by a bulldozer or run over by a bull from the... It would have been something. There's many stories like that. Many. Our children don't know these things. They don't know them. I've told a few to my children. But they don't come close in telling of the pain that we've lived through because of our language. Many of us. And how much respect we have for it. How much it is us. More of that should get out. I know a lot of people who went from Tobig, from Big Cove, from Ristogush. I know lots of them. Kingsclear. I've known many of your parents for many years. Since Shubi days, they call it the Shubi days. And I don't think too many of them express what they went through, and don't ever show the pain that have experienced, and the shame of allowing to show that they had fear. That they had fear. So what I think the message I'd like to get across, I know some of you were here this morning, but a lot of you weren't, is that to be true to yourself, go back to your language. Go back to who you are. Feel it from within. Live it from within. Don't give up what little you have now. Don't forsake it for the sake of English. Don't forsake yourselves, your children, or your grandchildren. Teach them to be honorable and that they are honorable in knowing their language. And that's my message. Thank you very much. Wilalio.
What's squeaking on your command? Well, either has Ali Yalcook, but Majimi on the Gayali, Yalu Jokamak, and Kizikotti, Masuino. And there's Gaknagan on the Magwan, Gakuside and Napo. And you with best most some Skizagan on the Magwan with best skied up Yalla Smith.
Oh,
Hey!
gee, I was listening to the story. He was telling us about a story that someone passed down to him, and it was about a person that was drinking.
Would you skied up to just mediali at Jal Walkers Gizigaku, my Gizigaku, so to belt them and Epsy out, Pamiat?
This man was so drunk that he couldn't even walk crooked. But he walked like he owned the road.
And now he's at the best sit. Nizog no di jelkwen katit zakhiga squeetit. Chualoye kdiye kigalawa.
When he looked back, he saw two policemen looking back. So he thought they must go and arrest me.
Idem got him that me kago yokta gini at a week question. Kizigik jockey gasquin. Samagwanek.
He thought that they could never catch him, so he took off running and he ran down towards the water.
Upchi bemigik jockey gasquid buglows or kizipki galo. Naga kizipis liwet goes Samagwanek.
He grabbed a hollow reed, and then he went into the water.
And Gizina with a quit, Penaps Kizibon and Clam Hagek, Nagabaglos or Coleman.
When he went, say that again. He grabbed a rock and put it on his chest and
Humpback.
went under.
And
Close enough.
lo yet Zakasid Lumpek. Dan the Massic Tati Begal Conchaga Seacook.
There he was lying with the fish biting at his ears.
Talawema, there's all the Bugalows or Colonel, huh? I got been up Colnum and Plum Hagek, that way Bobble.
He was so tied up with his hands holding the reed that he couldn't get at the fish that were biting at his ears.
Nami ayot, the Jokun catted yellow beated, yellow hearted, Musquawi, Gedos Wino, Cass, the mile, the end. Your daughter of Madnagam.
He was watching the policeman looking for them, and he just kept kind of watching them looking for him.
Aha. Det tulee babana lampe kujoa. Täpä si käy kiinni naakut. Me zal best koos, no jil kun ka tura vaccina.
Because he was looking through the water, everything looked bigger than it should be, and he looked and he saw the cop's foot about that big.
Desi waskuazo, edgy goody tamad ne tapaskulat man.
He got so tired of the police to go away that he lit a cigarette underwater. Started waiting for the cop to go.
Need more songs salagan utpen.
It must be the truth because our grandfather said so.
Just so best kun. Mamam niguas. Etas te bejan nemat ke kun nagano magun.
Each time when Daryl came home, our mother would tell us a story, or tell him a story,
An ko chil keo.
sometimes short.
Idem nekutiot peji was his dalop peji wam kum ko was islo.
She was visited by a young child.
Gwenny hidnid an almost bujimak medessin. Gwenny wam ked was is net almost bujimak medessin.
While the child was visiting with my mother, they heard a dog outside roaming around.
And net an mamam tap kudiak an kagan. Dial majaha.
She threw open the door and said, "Get out of here, Maja, get out." Maja, translate that.
Tiklai.
Translator.
I forget my note. Huh. And majan with wazis.
This child left,
Tabajian ups.
came
Up-
back.
Upstairs. Alex saw that tell Nick Whistle tell Maja is here again.
Said that this little child told my mother, said, "Get out of here," came back again.
Thank you.
I got to go to the airport in a little while, so I better get my short stories out of the way. First of all, let me say it's good to hear Maliseet. And I'm going to take a real risk here and have Daryl be my translator. Okay. Just bear in mind now, there is sometimes a little different between Maliseet and Passamaquoddy. I want to tell you a series of short stories. These are stories that I heard in my lifetime about short incidents. And some of them, you know, when somebody dies, if you listen real carefully, you hear stories at the wake. And I remember some of these stories because my grandmother was one of the people that always was sort of the officiator of wakes. And some of these stories I heard, and I retain them. And the older that I get, the funnier they sound. Nek diak beach, eh? Wa tamal ik, sipa ik. Diak square sauce. Kamajiak chigitine.
Long time ago, in an ancient village of Passamaquoddy, there was an old lady there, very old lady.
Meji meus kichinuag. Negma de tan keiwawa. Long
ago, when a person died, the people in the community handled everything, and they handled the burial and everything.
But they went to Majwilia, Utenek, Naganatnum, and you'd went Ochway, Machine walking.
Well, that time, you know, you didn't have to go to Eastport, Maine. Oh, no. Oh, Tom. And rely on services of the undertakers and whatnot too. There wasn't any money exchange, you know, it didn't cost too much to be dropped.
Don't editorialize. Yeah, wait, I would match in Angus Quesos.
This old lady died.
Tänään jakis, kun nyt matchin on, kun mä jätä sipkiu. Tekki mä skuati jalkis chitni, eh?
This old lady died and she was El Stiffo. No, rigor mortis, you know. She was there for quite a while and she was, stiff.
Abu open ja kulla pekässudik matchin, eh?
When the old lady died, she was on a rocking chair.
Niitä oli chitni ad, ja mä skuatit niitä elbit.
When they found her dead, she was sitting right now on the rocking chair.
Niitä asoltiin ja niitä, että juuri ulellaan, tämän jaan liikisi ullessi mellanen.
The people who fixed the bodies and whatnot said, well, we're going to have to fix her up. I don't know. We don't know how we're going to straighten her out, you know, because she's like a chair.
Mamde maakjau, kisi ja ulellaan ja kisi punan ja juuri hellassit puin. Et ja kulinaksit niitä hellassit. En mä jespas oltiin.
Well, finally they got her bent flat. Dressed her up good, you know. Macrame. No. Fixed her face up and she looked beautiful, you know, and all that.
En lispas oltiin.
And the wake began.
Ei ja mäkin oltiin, kun näet lagnun ja talo. Tän vuod wedabeksid, kas kuessos, na käisi uli mausso inuit, mitsoltiin ja Clintotin ja psidätä uun akvabii.
During the occasion of the wake, people talked of her past, of how good she was, and they ate and, you know, smoked and stuff like that, exchanged stories.
Keskäjud eboltiitit. Keskäjud eboltiitit. Mä tee agnun maudoltiin ja ta halop, anti when matching it, psidätä when Bill Witchil mitmaa.
They were saying that they were exchanging ideas of what will happen when
I don't know how to translate it either.
When a person dies, they haunt you. And they were talking about how in the past different people in the audience were haunted by a corpse.
Well, haunted is close enough, but it's almost there. Anyway, tot lagnun maatin ja kisjak mä chip mulsoltu kekes peskuhu.
As the stories progressed, some of them were starting to get very, very scared. You know, the stories got scarier. I went to St. Thomas, go ahead. I don't know the comparative degree if you'll kill me. No. They got progressively scared.
Keskäjud lagnun maatiitit, kamnu ja guazakhi will beat up chapit, matchin etkut.
While they were talking, the corpse sat up.
Siitä maussu inu kikka ja gnut jamkessu.
At that point, it was evacuation. They ran over things, you know. I tell you why. They're like buffalo when I was going.
Would you have beskas quesos, kamajioto wuli widabil?
There was one person, an old lady, who was a good friend of hers,
Negamlumade kola wheel.
and she wasn't afraid of her.
Ja gjort kul bad bin would you have ebid puin chalapu. Mr. Machine when a pu.
She turned around and looked at the corpse. The corpse was obviously dead, but she looked at her.
Tiel jau. Up chadangila as all gitiain.
What the hell is wrong with you?
The story goes on, but that's a typical story of one of the things that you hear around as you're listening to people use the language. Another story that I heard, this is more traditional in terms of just animal stories or insect stories. There was one time,
There was a time when there were native people who were tremendously poor, dirt poor. All the hunters were coming home with nothing, no game. And all of a sudden, things kind of started changing. There was fish out of the lake and kids on the floor. No. Eat them. No. And people started eating better, you know.
With the Agulosik Iliam, Negamina, Taliwida Binezigis Wilkiskak.
There's this pissmaker.
No.
I can only translate the Gilliam as a person who makes water.
It's just a name.
Okay. There's a bug called Zagillium. Anyway,
Cricket.
he came out and looked around, you know.
Yeah. Cricket, ne?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, well, let's get in with our cricket.
Go.
Okay? Sigilia metali, we so. Negamia, Madelo, Kel, Madetali, Makwen, Mo, and Michuak, and Kuchi, Nipan, there, Poyagwali, Pipi, que.
In the spring, he didn't gather any food. He didn't get anything at all. He just kept whistling around the country, you know.
Ja, klokker ik en uksuk, zie dat skitchen we en uksuk. Eli nuksuk. Het look gedit in de gamagwatem en ja Michuakans en Miguel got up special to go.
There were these Passamaquoddies. No. Oh no, Indian ants. Gathering food, you know, being busy, being industrious, and gathering food and getting ready.
Het look gedit in dat. Niet daar en ja majet go. En zodat je zo'n gist dat we go als je wil even zaad tegen op zijn Michuakan. Dus je ook de Polly de Hazel dit wat squeep wat in de godmoon, ja.
In the as the winter approached, all the ants were very sure that they did the right thing, that they had all kinds of food. They had their food trunks all stashed away, and they were very confident that they were going to survive this harsh winter.
Would you aglo say Gilliam? Ja, is majet go. Met je aglo negamali pipi kwet.
There was this Zagillium running around whistling, but his whistle was freezing. No. It was getting cold.
Maar kewas is niet daar beetje whisky te go. En we zien Gilliam matje hanu ik wou elchik tegen ja, maar de kisi when we zwuni go na kamade heel Michuakan ik wou.
Well, pretty soon it wasn't whistling weather. So the Zagillium there, he doubled back to his old habitat. He discovered in his home that everything was disintegrated.